So this podcast, we're talking about buying a property today and what would it look like over 30 years of ownership. And buying a property, what I mean is an investment property. So let's say you own your home. Today you wanted to buy an investment property. What does that look like over 30 years? So we can go through the valuation, what would it appreciate at, what the rents would be today, and then over 30 years. But I think it might be kind of helpful to look at and break down a property buying today, and just see how it looks like, 30 years from now. Because I think sometimes we don't take that in consideration, and we don't know what that would look like. So over 30 years, you suggested to start at a price of what again?
500,000. So and before we get started, right? I think at the end of the day, you as an individual have to choose the pain of doing it or the pain of not doing it 30 years down the line. And if you didn't do it, you have to live with the consequences.
Right.
But hopefully you do it, at least one.
Right.
Or at least one house. And then for today's example, we're using 500,000.
That's right.
For the sales price. You could buy a 3-bed, 2-bath, single family home, no HOA.
Right.
Within an hour and a half in Southern California.
That's right.
And the rent that we're going to be using today is going to be $2,800 a month.
To start at, yeah.
To start at. And then we're going to do the projections for the future value at 3.5% for the rent and 4% for the appreciation of the asset of the house.
Which is 4% for the appreciation. It's pretty dang conservative.
Right.
So we probably could have used 1 or 2% higher than that, but we wanted to be as conservative as possible, as realistic as possible, just so, we don't want to overly fudge the numbers here. But 4% over 30 years. So you bought the property today for $500,000. You immediately rented it out. 30 years from now, if we assume 4% appreciation every single year, that would look like 1.6 million. Yeah, 1.62 is what it would be worth 30 years from now. And that's, again, just by buying it and keeping it. Mm-hmm. And so using 4%, that's pretty dang conservative. It could be worth a little bit less, a little bit more than that, but that's just a good rule of thumb for something you buy for $500,000.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then for the rent, as far as if everything continues to be the way it is at 3% over the next 30 years, your monthly rent could be $7,800 at least.
Yeah, if you rent it today for $2,800.
If you rented it today for that amount. And I think that one thing that we can bring up that people should take note of is if you don't do that, if you don't buy that house and you don't have that asset in 30 years, then if you want to be a millionaire in 30 years, you need to save $53,000 a year for the next 30 years. $53,000 in savings over the next 30 years so that you can have $1.6 million. Yeah. Otherwise, you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
You're not going to be there.
Right.
So in some way, shape, or form, you have to figure out, okay, do I save $53,000 a year or do I invest into a property and then in 30 years, I'm going to have a nest egg that potentially could be $1.6 million.
Yeah.
Not even including the monthly profit that you're getting, right? So
the cash flow.
The cash flow from the property, you're not including that. Of course, there are expenses associated with it, but in general, you end up making a profit. That's why people do it, and that's what people have been doing that for 5,000 years.
Right. Exactly. And I think, do both. Save. Invest in a retirement plan, but also, hey, let's just say you just bought one investment property. Mm-hmm. Looking at this number, I just buy a $500,000 home, and I just rent. Even if I rented it, I would never suggest this, but over 30 years, breaking even, the tenant's just paying rent. Now it's worth 1.6, just over that. But the other thing is that the tenant just paid off my loan.
Right.
And I, you can't get that in the stock market. So you find a good tenant. Yes. And are there going to be hiccups along their way? Absolutely. It's not a straight line, every single year over 30 years, but tenants paying off your debt. So now after 30 years, I have a paid off $1.6 million home that I just had to be responsible for and to care after. And now I have over $7,800 a month coming in. So I'm 30, I'm almost 34, so I'll be 64. I'll be 64 then, and I'll just have to pay. So I have $7,800 coming in, if not a little bit more, and I have a paid off loan. I just have to pay taxes, insurance, and then any other like repairs and stuff. So I'm probably making $6,500 a month net.
Right.
You know, that I would say that's pretty cool. I mean, I could travel with that. You know, I could buy some wine.
I can live in Europe for 2 months.
Yeah.
I can be in Italy.
And that's one
Tuscany.
property, not including your primary, you know? So this is one property. This isn't 15.
Yeah, right, exactly. One property. The other thing that most people don't know too is you can start out investing by buying a second home. Let's say the property's out in like Quintal, Palm Desert. You can buy it with 10% down.
Yeah.
I'm not a lender, so talk to your lender. Full disclosure, it's not a guarantee, just a scenario. You could do that, and if for some reason you have to rent it out, then you lease it out, then you're into that property for 10% down.
Right.
So it can be 50 grand.
I have seen
to
that.
get started. Yeah.
Yeah.
So people do that, and then of course there's going to be paint, some of the other things. You know, every property has that, but then you got into a property with 50 grand instead of 150 grand.
Right.
Right. So you could do that, and at the end of the day, like here's a visual of what that would look like. There is time, 30 years, and then the value of the asset is generally going to go up. But you're right, it's not a straight line.
Right.
It's more like this. But at the end of the day, looking at 30 years in the spectrum, this is what it looks like. Long term, still going to be better off than if you didn't do it.
Exactly. Well, that's the cool thing with real estate is that yes, it does go up and down. It's not as sporadic as stocks, so it's not. You know, I mean, just look at COVID. What did real estate do? For the most part,
look at what the stock market did.
Right. For the most part, real estate held, and then we had one of the craziest cycles of real estate in the last 18 months that we had in the last like 30, 40 years.
Right.
And so it's it's more stable, but there are going to be ups and downs. Mm-hmm. It's not a straight line, but at over 30 years, real estate has always gone up. Over 30 years, which is really helpful. But again, this is just one property. There's some other benefits after 30 years, right? I'll have some tax benefits.
Right.
There's going to be some additional tax benefits with depreciation as well off my ordinary income that a CPA can go over with you. And another way to do this, besides the second home route, like what I did is I first bought my primary and then lived in it for 5 years, and then I bought a second property that I moved into, and then my first one became my rental. Mm-hmm. So that's another really realistic way to have a rental property is keep the one you're living in and go buy another one and then rent out that first one because you're getting a primary loan, and so your down payment options and interest rates are better if you do it that way. And that worked really well for my wife and I with getting our first property.
Yeah, you can also, let's say once you have it 33 years down the road, you can do cash or refinance depending what the rates are doing, or you can do a HELOC, a home equity line of credit.
Yes.
Those are still around. So yeah, of course the rates are going to be based on prime plus a margin, which is normal, but you can still, for a HELOC, and you can still leverage that to buy another property. You can use it for down payment, rehab. Then you can refinance that future property once you improve it, so the value is more, and then you can pay off that HELOC and then buy a second one. What I've also heard stories from people buying one, they do everything they can to pay it off. Then what they do, they borrow against it, or a HELOC or something else, or a hard money loan, or a cross collateral loan. So they get creative financing on that. Then they buy the other one. Then they just start leveraging more that way. So they have one that they leverage every single time to buy 25 properties.
Yeah.
Which I've seen, which is crazy. So over time, they're leveraging one property, and then they're buying other ones. And then the tenants are paying all the houses. Yeah. So at the end of the day, you can have 25 houses leveraging only one house if you know how to do it, or if you're talking to the right people. So
and with leveraging a property, you could wait till it's fully paid off, but I've even waited 4 or 5 years, and I've done a cash out refinance. And now the only con with that is that you restart over, at least I did, another 30-year loan. So I think I was 4 or 5 years into owning that property. And then I did a cash out refinance. I actually was able to lower my rate, pull out almost $80,000, and I was still cash flow positive in that property. But I did restart my loan over again in 30 years. At my age, I was okay with that because I'm more for the long haul, the long term.
Right.
I did increase my mortgage monthly fee, but I still had several $100s of cash flow positive there. So for me, now it might not be right for everybody, but for me it was right there because I was able to go buy another property with those same funds. And again, both tenants are paying off those debts.
Right.
So it can be, if you are open to leveraging, not everybody is, but you can do some creative ways to go buy other income producing assets.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. So you can do that and more, right? So, and then legacy. At the end of the day, let's say you only buy one house. It's this one. You don't want to be a real estate mogul or a real estate investor.
You don't want to have headaches.
Fine. You don't want to have headaches. You can always hire people. But
yes,
let's say you don't want to hire people. You don't want to have that. You don't want to go that route. That's fine too. I mean, you're still going to be better off. You can pass that on to your kids. Here's the other thing that's really nice about learning about real estate is, let's say you live in Orange County, and once you pass away, your spouse passes away, you have a trust that goes to your kids. The other thing that your kids might have the option of is Prop 19, where your tax base will stay the same, your kids move into the property. That's another possibility for your kids. So it's legacy that you're leaving behind,
yes.
Right? Or going back to the investment scenario, let's say you decide that your investment property in La Quinta, after owning it for 30 years, now you want to move into it. So all you have to do is you reverse let's say you did an exchange, or let's say you want to move it back to primary. You can do that. There are options for you to do that without any tax penalties. You just have to talk to a CPA to make sure how to do that. But it doesn't matter what you do. I think ultimately real estate is a way for people to make more money.
Absolutely.
Long term, and have
it's another way
for a rainy day, or at the end of the day when you need long term care and you're 90, you're gonna need that help.
Well, and I mean, how cool would it be, and this is again only after 30 years, there could be another 30 years after that you're still living. So let's say for me, using me an example, I'll be 64 at that time. I'm hopefully, God willing, going to live longer than 64. I probably have another 20 more years.
Yeah,
that's going to be worth over $2 million.
Right.
More than $2 million. So let's just say by the time I pass away, I give to my kid a paid off $2 million property with rent probably at another 20 more years, over $12,000 a month.
Right.
One property. I mean, the cool thing with that is, that could pay for kids and grandkids' college. It could pay for down payment for one of their houses, whatever. It could go to, maybe a portion goes to charity. I mean, that's just one property. I think the cool thing and the fascinating thing that I find with this is that it just gives you so many more options, because what happens if you need long-term care? What if you have to retire early because of a issue, because of a disability? I mean, there's so many different issues. I mean, we all know somebody that's been in a serious issue that needed some help, and you just have to go through, one person away from you, and somebody has had either a huge medical issue, maybe one of their spouses passed away. I mean, there's unfortunate things that happen, and so I'd love to be in a position where it doesn't have to be a huge issue for me or my family if something like that arises, and I want to be in a place I can help. So I think that's what's cool about real estate and everything else, is that it gives you more options.
Yeah, no, I agree, and what a gift to be in a position to help your kids and your grandkids, because you did the right planning, because you didn't buy that BMW, because you didn't buy that Audi. No offense to anybody.
You did buy a BMW though.
Actually, three. I had 3 BMWs.
Preach
I should have bought houses.
Preach it. There
Hey,
you
I'm
go.
speaking from experience.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking because I didn't do it.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, we have to make sacrifices.
That's
and
right.
We have to look at where the money goes. Otherwise, you never get started. You never get into that segment of assets. And if your only planning is stocks, bonds, mutual funds,
Yeah.
or I call them soft assets,
Yeah.
right?
Soft asses.
Soft assets. At the end of the day,
We're all thinking that I had to say it.
well, see, you gotta get your mind on it. You gotta go to confession, but you don't do that, so there you have it. But at the end of the day, is you want to diversify as much as you can. I'm not an investment advisor. I speak from what's working for me.
For you, yeah.
And you should do everything that's there, so you're hedging against the other ones. But I think ultimately people do end up better off when they invest in real estate. And
Yes.
here's the other thing. I forgot to mention this. So my wife did a scenario for someone, and one of the things that we were talking about, because we were talking about real estate appreciation and all those things, so she was asking me some basic questions. But ultimately, they did a model where, in the model, the individual, if they purchased, they were renting, but if they purchased a home and they only held it for 20 years, even though they were already in their 60s, if they held that property for 20 years, even though they had never bought a property before,
Dang.
if they just put that into the planning, instead of continuing to rent for 20 years, they were much better off with the property than renting. Even if they bought it in their 60s.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would say
It's
for 5. If they only kept it for 5-7 years, they would have been far
And the
better.
difference per month was like $250.
Right.
I mean, we probably spent that at Starbucks.
Right.
Or
You
we
do,
go
yeah.
out. That won't. You spend all of that at restaurants. But anyway, so at the end of the day, it's like we do spend the money. We just don't put the money where it should go.
I never met somebody that after 30 years of owning a property say, "I wish I never bought that property." I've never met somebody that just paid off the, that they said, "I wish I never got into this."
Yeah. So the math is there.
It doesn't mean that it wasn't extremely easy, but going back to how we started, it's difficult either way. It's difficult either way. Where if you there's pain into trying to put aside money to buy a $500,000 home, and then having some reserves in case that there's some vacancies or some unexpected expenses, but. What we're trying to say is it's worth it. If you do that, if you are able to make that sacrifice, just one property. I mean, how I see it, my brain goes, well, dude, if I could, how many times over can I do that?
How many more times can I do that?
Yeah, that's how my mind works. So
you do that 10 times, you're going to be at $100,000 a month.
Oh yeah, easily, in 30 years from now.
Right.
Plus, what they're worth.
So that,
I mean, that's how cool is that?
So that Ferrari that you're looking at, you could buy it in 2 months.
Oh yeah.
Cash.
Oh yeah.
So I know that. Yeah, it's super exciting. I get very excited when we go over numbers and future value.
Yeah.
So I just can't say fast enough to keep buying.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah. And most of you that are watching, it's it's super buying a house, buying a complicated. Yes. Reach out to us or a realtor. That's one of us who can go over these scenarios and go over down payment, closing costs, and just put a plan together as to how long would it take you to save up for that down payment, and because it's worth it.
Yeah, I would just say reach out to an expert, somebody that can help you with the scenario. Everyone's different, or at least put a plan in place. So if you can't buy now, then you can buy in a year or 2 years.
Exactly.
And the other thing that we do offer, one of the things that I started doing 2 years ago is investment seminars.
Yeah.
So one coming up in June 15th, and it's 4 to 6. And in the seminar, I'm just going to go over basic ways for people to buy.
A little bit more in detail, yeah.
Yes, a little bit more detail about this, and really just how to save, how to systematic savings.
Right.
Where to put the money so you get compound interest on it. And really how to get started. So once you have the money, then where to look, where to buy, and who to talk to. And you have a plan in place, you know more or less what things are going to cost and how much is going to cost for the rehab, or how much you can get for the rent. All those things, we're going to go over that a little bit more detail. But at least it gives you a footprint if you can't do it now, then you can do it in 2 years.
For sure.
So there's no excuse, and I'm not the only one who does that.
Right.
Right. So there shouldn't be an excuse. Oh, I don't know how to do it. It's like, well, if you put yourself out there, if you seek it, you're gonna find it.
That's right.
Read a book.
That's
Go on
right.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Talk to a friend.
Speaking of YouTube, this will be on YouTube.
Yeah. So, anyways, anything else? Any other thoughts that you want to contribute?
No,
I think it was good.
Yeah, reach out, ask questions, and yeah, I just spoke to somebody over the weekend that they're not going to be in a position for another 12 months to buy a duplex actually, but we put together a plan, and he's already this person's already working on a couple things in his first steps to make that dream a reality. So a year goes by pretty dang quickly, you know. So definitely put your best foot forward.
Yeah, no, I agree.